Hey everybody, happy Monday afternoon. Lynn Del Mastro Thompson with Heartfire Healing here. And I felt inspired today to share a little bit about this quote that spoke to me a couple years ago when I heard it at a conference. So the quote went something like, "The modern equivalent of a voodoo curse is a medical diagnosis." And when I heard those words spoken at a conference about 2 years ago, they really struck me, those words. They struck me kind of right in the gut, like a punch, on both a personal and a professional level. So in a personal level, it really hit to my own story and to my own journey of being diagnosed or misdiagnosed, as I've been writing about a lot lately, with leukemia. And basically, I remember that feeling of a diagnosis being like a curse. And of course, in my story, it actually did sort of feel like it was a different level of a curse because it wasn't even the correct diagnosis. And I know that's happened to many people as well, where you're not even given the correct diagnosis and you're living your life under the assumption that that diagnosis is true, and you're basing all of your decisions and kind of what you're doing with your care based on that reference point of a medical diagnosis that you're given. And on a professional level, I've seen how a diagnosis really hangs over someone. And if you can relate to this, please let me know. If you're watching live or in the comments, let me know if you can relate to that feeling of hearing the words pronounced "you have" and whatever that diagnosis is, and feeling like that's actually a curse hanging over you. Because that is the moment when your whole life felt like it changed, when your whole life feels like it went from being one thing to being the moment afterwards where you live your life from that reference point. And yet, I'd like to back up and say, what is a diagnosis? Hey, Chris, thanks for hopping on live. What is a diagnosis? A diagnosis is just a label of something. And in my case, the label wasn't even correct. And even if it is correct, it doesn't mean that it becomes the whole of you, that it becomes your entire identity, that it consumes who you are, because you are so many more things than that label, than that diagnosis. You are all of the things that you were before someone pronounced that diagnosis in the room, in the exam room, in the hospital, wherever you were. You are still a mother or a father or a husband or a wife or a child, sister, brother, like whatever your identity was before you heard those words pronounced. I'm here to tell you those same things are still true, even if you're struggling right now with your diagnosis, even if you're struggling with hearing those words, because they're just words, and they come from a paradigm of the Western medical system, which when I work with people with chronic illness, they want to say chronic illness is just forever. Chronic illness is chronic, and it will never go away, because they lack the tools to help someone truly heal. They only have pills and surgery, and pills and surgery do not fix everything. Yes, they're great for certain things, and I always love to say Western medicine, I'm not knocking it. If you're having a heart attack, they're great for things like that. They're great for emergency situations. But for things like chronic illness, not so much. They are just good at kind of helping you stabilize or try to prevent the progression of a disease. And yet, what if that diagnosis and what if that thing that they say you have could completely heal? And I know to some of you that may seem like pie in the sky, far away, but I've known people with diagnoses of autoimmune diseases and other chronic illness who have actually completely have no sign of that disease in their body. And that's gone on for many years, that they've lived their life from that place. So coming back to that quote of a diagnosis feeling like it is a curse, well, it's a curse because are we buying into it? And that's one of the things I want to share with you in this message and in this video is, are you buying into it? What is your belief system about what you have been told? Are you willing to be open and curious about other possibilities? Or do you believe what has been pronounced to you by a doctor, that this illness is what you have and that it will be with you forever? Because those beliefs actually are some of the things that prevent healing, and they're some of the things that keep that disease active in the body. So I think I shared a story in a written post a week or two ago about a client who I had worked with over the number of several years. She's kind of come and gone in my practice. And she popped up again a couple weeks ago, and she only seems to come in when she's in a healing crisis, when she's in a flare. And I decided in that moment that it was actually not empowering to her to continue to allow that pattern to continue in working with me, that she could only come when she needed kind of emergency support. Yes, emergency support is definitely important, but if you're not getting to the root of the problem, then you're just going to stay stuck in that. So when I said to her that I wasn't going to continue to kind of only see her in those moments of crisis, that we needed to have more consistency, because I found that that's really the key to getting clients the best results that I'm able to get them, she said to me, you know, from what I understand, autoimmune disease can't be healed. It's chronic. You just keep chasing it around and it pops up in different places. And in that conversation, I realized why it had been so difficult to work with her. Not to blame her for this, but it was challenging to get her the same level of results that I was getting for other people, because she was stuck in this belief of what was and wasn't possible. So for her, what was possible in working with me was just symptom management, much like Western medicine had to offer. So I could help her feel better in those moments of crisis, but she wasn't really believing that if she came to work with me consistently and we really dug in to the roots of the issue, and we really did things like releasing old trauma, helping the body to really get into its own zone of healing, that anything could happen for her. All I could do was just help her kind of manage those really challenging moments. And of course, you know, it was nice to be able to help support her in those moments, but it was kind of disempowering ultimately of her ultimate healing that was possible for her, to let her stay stuck in that. So those beliefs that we think on a regular basis, those things that we tell ourselves on a daily basis about what our health is, whether we live with a chronic illness or whether we just live with some more minor health problems, what are you telling yourself on a daily basis about what is possible? Are you saying, I believe in the possibility that I can heal, that my body can heal and I can be healthy? Or are you telling yourself, nope, a doctor said this is chronic, and from my understanding, chronic equals forever, and it's only going to get so good, and that's as good as it can get? And that is the biggest difference between working with a client like the one I just shared her story, and working with some clients who I've seen tremendous shifts and people going off of medications and their bodies healing in ways that Western medicine can't really offer or understand, because I've had doctors in my own experience and doctors with clients sometimes say, how is this possible? I don't understand what I'm seeing, because it's outside of their frame of reference. So when we buy into, to sum up kind of this message that I really want to share with you today about this quote that I heard a few years ago, when we take in that message and we internalize it and we live our life with that basically as our truth of, I have this is my diagnosis, then that is kind of like our compass for life. That's the image that just popped in my mind. And you're living everything under the guidance of that. That's your direction moving forward. But what if that didn't have to be the case? What if you could go back to being who you were before you heard those words? Whether you still suffer from some of the particular challenges of that condition, or whether your body completely heals, you are still way more than that diagnosis. You are more than that. And that is why I'm so passionate about that message, that we are not a diagnosis. We are all the things and all the complexities that we are as people before we heard those words said. So if this message really resonated and you haven't gotten your 2 free chapters of my book yet, I would invite you. There's a link where you could sign up and receive 2 free chapters of my book, where I dive a little bit deeper into some of this philosophy and mindset of not becoming your diagnosis. Because We aren't. Despite what doctors say, despite what Western medicine wants to say about certain chronic illnesses, that's not really the truth. That's just a frame of reference and a paradigm from a system and a lens that they have. But there are things beyond that scope and beyond that lens that could lead to further healing. So are you open to those possibilities? Thanks for taking the time to watch, and I will be going live again tomorrow, so check it out then.